Hello and welcome to another episode of That Sports Guys podcast. I am Craig Forrestall. I am That Sports Guy. Go ahead and find me on Twitter at that_sports_guy, where you can find all of my latest football takes. Also, NFLDraftDiamonds.com is proud to feature the That Sports Guy podcast on its website. Stop by NFLDraftDiamonds.com, your official draft coverage king. Hello and welcome to another episode of Player Profile Interviews. I am Craig Forrestall, also known as That Sports Guy on Twitter. Go ahead and give me a follow. But with us today is Northern Iowa offensive tackle Spencer Brown. Spencer, why don't you go ahead and say hello to everyone?
How we doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Hopefully everyone listening is a little bit excited now to hear you coming on through the airwaves. And let's just jump right into it. You play at Northern Iowa. You're an Iowa kid. But your hometown, it's pretty small. So what can you tell us what life is like in Lenox, Iowa?
It's just that. It's pretty small. I mean, not a whole lot's going on down there. I think the town's about 1,300. People tell me it keeps growing. I don't know if they're lying to me or not. It feels the same to me every time I growing up in a small town, not a whole lot going on. Everyone's pretty much involved in agriculture from my understanding. Everybody plays everything, so everybody played 3 to 4 sports throughout high school. Close-knit community. I mean, I go back, and the support is great. I mean, everybody I know, or everybody I see, I know. So it's a good community to grow up in, especially my upbringing was great, and I plan to move back there eventually someday for sure.
Excellent. And like you said, everybody's playing everything, and you weren't any exception. You mainly played 3 sports, but I also saw that you spent some time with the track team as well. But basically, it was football, basketball, and baseball for you. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And now we'll talk about the football thing in a second, but you were a big-time basketball player. I actually read that not only did you average 22 points and 19 rebounds, but I actually saw that there was one game where you had 42 points and 41 rebounds. How does someone do that?
Just don't foul out, really. I'm pretty sure it was against Stanton. I'm not pretty sure. I know it was against Stanton. I won't forget that. But it was either 3 or 4 overtimes, and I was the only starter left at the end of the game. I was playing with all freshmen and sophomores that suited up for varsity because all the varsity guys have fouled out. So it was pretty much me and a bunch of young guys out there.
And now, was your game more of a traditional back to the basket, or did you kind of take that Dirk Nowitzki approach, and were you a big guy with a soft touch?
I'd say I was more back to the basket. I wasn't dirking anybody, I guess I should say, but especially being 6'8" and playing Class 1A basketball, I mean, it was pretty easy to outman somebody in that sense.
Any recruiting interest in basketball?
My junior year, before my senior year, I guess, is basketball interest started coming in. It's mostly from NAIs, Buena Vista, just to throw those two out there. And then I committed halfway through my senior basketball season. So I committed to football, and then after that, I didn't hear anything else.
And then with football, you played 8-man football in high school. What was that transition going from the 8-man game where you played tight end to the 11-man game where you eventually were going to suit up as an offensive tackle?
That transition was pretty rough. I remember my first meeting at UNI. I was in the tight end room, and he throws me this playbook, and I'm like, holy hell, dude. I don't know how to start looking at this. And I remember we were sitting in the dorm room at night. It was during fall camp, and I was sitting down with guys that had played 11-man football, and they're throwing terminology and all this other formations. I'm like, dude, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then eventually I learned, and physically I remember going through my freshman season just getting absolutely pounded by people. Carter Schultz, who went and had stints in the NFL and then the XFL. I mean, he would just seriously demolish me every single day. So it was a growing up stage for sure, and it's paid off, and I give thanks to those guys that did humble me in a way and help me grow as a player.
And you talked about that first year being an adjustment. I actually read somewhere that you gained close to 60 pounds during that redshirt year. And I saw somewhere where it wasn't uncommon for you to have a lunch that was 6 egg sandwiches, a big tub of yogurt, 3 glasses of whole milk, and then you also had a high-carb powder that you mixed with Gatorade for workouts. Is that pretty much accurate?
That's pretty accurate. I remember, I think I was 223 or something like that when my first weigh at UNI, and then my first start a year later I was about 298, somewhere around there. So up there, but my diet, it was, honestly, I look back, I don't know how I did it. I mean, all my friends, I just hate eating, and they're just like, oh, dude, you're lucky you get to eat that much. We gotta like stay fit and stuff like that. I'm like, dude, it is absolutely awful. I remember, for some reason, I always remember eating brats. I would have like 6, no bun, like a quart of yogurt, just the whole thing in one sitting. Definitely milk, and it'd take me like almost an hour and a half just to get through all of it. So I had to cut out a pretty good time slot just to get my lunch in.
Man, that's a lot of food, and it's paid off as you've grown. And with your game, one thing that I've seen, and I've seen a lot of people say about you, if I just had to put it into quick terms, people say that you're long, lean, quick, with a nasty side. Would you say that's an accurate assessment of where your game is now and how you've grown?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you just listen to my diet. It's way different now. It's pretty lean stuff. I eat a lot of fish, I still eat yogurt, but in smaller quantities. I ate spinach plain with like a little bit of ranch. I don't know. I'm kind of weird. I ate the same thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the last year and a half, I think. So I have a pretty strict diet. And then long, I guess I'm a pretty long guy. And then nasty for sure. I remember like my first and second year plan, I was just kind of out there. Oh my gosh, I hope I'm doing my job right. Don't yell at me. Don't mess up. Everybody's watching. And now I really don't care. Just trying to go out there and
And
pretty much
with
manhandle
that
people.
manhandling people, you've caught the attention of a lot of people, not only around the league, but also draft Twitter. And you know what draft Twitter can be like. But one person specifically on Twitter that highlighted you was Jim Nagy, director of the Senior Bowl. And he was talking about how impressed him and his staff were when watching your junior film. When you start hearing people from like the Senior Bowl and different things like that really appreciate your game, what does that do for you?
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And obviously, those guys are very prestigious individuals, and everybody has a lot of respect for them and their opinions. But I also have my own opinion. I know where my game's at and where I want my game to be at, and I don't think I've even made my way to being how good I can be. So I hold myself pretty humble. I mean, I don't really get a big head or talk about myself. You'll never hear me say anything about getting drafted or stuff like that. I'm pretty much just put my head down, work, and hold myself to a higher standard than what people give me. So, in that sense, I mean, I always say it's pen to paper. I mean, it's just people saying stuff. It doesn't matter until April rolls around. We'll see where the chips fall. But until then, I don't believe any of the
And
hype.
now I wanted to ask you something about the practices with Northern Iowa because there's a lot of talent, not only on the offensive side of the ball, but defense as well. What is it like going up against Ellison Smith in practice? And if you could just talk about his overall game and how he's helped make you better.
Yeah, that's a never day off type of thing. Let me tell you, it's a nose to the grindstone practice, and when one-on-ones roll around, I know I have my hands full. I mean, he's just an absolute freaking athlete. He's just like pretty much just as tall as me, but faster and leaner and can bend. And people always ask me, "Well, is he really that good, or is he just fast?" He's that good, people. Just seen, and I don't know how many sacks he had last year. I think maybe right around 15. I remember just getting up off the bench just to watch him work dudes, and it's unbelievable how he's transformed as well. I think he's like 180 pounds coming into UNI, and now he's about 260, and still has a six pack. So he's a freak of nature, and I'm super excited to watch him play this fall for sure.
And now we talked about you, and we touched on Ellison Smith's body transformation. How important is the weight room to the Northern Iowa football culture?
It's a pretty much one of the most important aspects of becoming a player at UNI. I'd say. I mean, we're not these big SEC Alabama places. We're not getting 5-star recruits or anything like that. You're getting small town kids or guys in big cities that were overlooked and come into UNI a little underdeveloped. And then once you go in the weight room, you actually buy in. You can't just go in there and slack off. You actually have to buy in and push yourself a little bit. I mean, your numbers will fly off the charts. I remember in high school, I couldn't barely bench 250, and then I benched 500 last week. So, I mean, we have it down here at UNI, and Jed Smith and Kane Thompson and those other strength coaches in the room know what they're doing. They believe in us, and that means we believe in ourselves. So it's a really, really good culture to be a part of.
And now there's a couple of other high-end offensive tackles in the Missouri Valley Conference with Dylan Radins at North Dakota State and Drew Himmelman at Illinois State. Do you pay attention to them and their accolades and their accomplishments? And do you use that as a measurement to try and take the number one overall spot as top tackle in the conference?
I wouldn't say I pay attention to it a whole lot. I mean, I know they have the accolades and things of that nature out of me. I've never been first team all conference, and they have been. Does it bother me? I mean, not really in that sense. I know they're good players. I know I'm a pretty decent player as well, and I hope the best for those guys. I know they're good players, and I hope to see what the future holds for all of us, I guess, in that sense.
And now, Spencer, I wanted to take a couple of minutes just to ask you some questions off the field because your teammates have said that you have a one-of-a-kind personality. So what would be a song that you're embarrassed to admit that you like?
I'm not really too embarrassed to say I admit that I like anything, but probably Someone Like You by Adele. It'd probably be a song if I was blaring in my car singing my heart out. It would probably be a shocker to see.
And now when you're blaring that song, what would be the dream car that you'd be blaring that song in?
A dream car that I'd actually fit in. I think one thing I'd want to buy, I always liked the GMC Denali trucks, lifted, murdered out, black. And then that'd probably make the Adele song a little more weird, actually.
And then what's the most interesting or memorable class that you've taken at Northern Iowa?
Probably wellness through aquatics. It was like I don't want to say a swimming class, but it was like snorkeling and paddleboarding. And I took it with another officer. And it was like one of the most hilarious days I've ever seen in a class because it's all these regular students, and it's me and another offensive lineman that weighed like 330 pounds. And we'd like get these paddle boards set up, and we'd step on them right off the sidewalk we're on, and this paddle board just sank straight to the water. Like it couldn't hold our weight, so we just pretty much sat on the side and watched everybody else have fun.
And if I was going to get something to eat around campus, where would I go?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say I like Greenhouse a lot. It's like a healthy Chipotle, and that's probably one of my favorite spots to go to.
All right, definitely. I can do that. And then we'll go ahead. We'll finish it off with if you won $1 million and you could only donate it to one charity or one cause, what would it be?
One charity or one cause. I would say the first one that popped in my head was Children's Hospital of Iowa. I think the way that they do for the Children's Hospital is great. I haven't personally down there, but I remember being a part of the wave 2 years ago, and I just loved it. It was such a surreal experience, and seeing those kids up there. And then I thought myself how grateful I am to be down here playing with just athletes, and they're just up there fighting for their lives. And I think it'd just be a great place to donate that money for sure.
Absolutely. And then before we get out of here, Spencer, any final words or thoughts for our listeners and what they can expect from the Northern Iowa football program this year?
I would say expect a show. I mean, I'm super, super excited for the season to get underway. I'm not going to give any spoilers. I'm just going to let our play talk for us and just come to the fall and be ready to watch the Panthers take care of business.
You heard it here first. He's not going to give away any secrets. Just tune in to the Panthers. For Spencer Brown, I'm Craig Forstall. Until next time, stay safe and be easy.
Hey everybody, Craig Forstall. Thanks for tuning in and listening to another episode of That Sports Guys podcast. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at @that_sports_guy to catch all the latest updates and podcast episodes. Until next time, stay safe and be easy.